Hello everyone, this is your host, Hager Neeb, also known as Blah Blah, and welcome to another Dreambubble podcast-ish interview episode. Don't know which one it is yet, but we'll find out by the time this is uploaded. Joining me is a wonderful dreams creator. He is known for all of his wacky and impressive DualShock 4 controller adaptations into instruments and games. He is TannicAlloy.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
And thank you so much for coming on. So as I mentioned, Tannic has done a lot of great stuff. If you haven't heard of him before, what he's been doing is really cool because he's finding different ways to use the DualShock 4 controller to make these crazy things in dreams that you wouldn't expect to be able to be possible. It reminds me a lot of like the Nintendo Labo stuff, how they're using the Joy-Cons for a lot of different gameplay purposes. But this is TannicAlloy is basically doing the Sony side of that, trying to mix and match the DualShock 4 controller into making things like Dance Dance Revolution, facial tracking, and he's even made pool by like rotating his TV monitor sideways, and it's crazy. It honestly blows my mind, everything you do. And my first question for you is, how do you get these ideas? Is it something where you're kind of just experimenting with the controller first, or do you know what you're making beforehand?
Quite often, I have an idea ahead of time. You know, one of the first things I did is I took this blender that my wife and I have, and I modeled that up in dreams, just to kind of get some practice and get used to that. And I was like, okay, that was fun. Let me see what other bits and pieces I can add to this. And then I turned that blender into a spaceship, and it's kind of cheesy looking, but that sort of got me started on this sort of path of like looking around my house or my apartment and seeing if I could either mimic that or take that and twist it. And so I was thinking, okay, how can I make a ukulele in dreams? And I want to mimic the actual motions of playing the ukulele. Or in the case of a lot of the controller projects where it's, using the controller for something else, that kind of started from this in an interview with someone. But there was a stream that Media Molecule did where they had Ed, sound guy, Ed Hardgrave, I think his name is, and he was making lightning sounds. And whenever the audio from the microphone that was plugged into the controller, whenever that sensed audio, it would send an output. And that video of them doing that came out for Dreams released in early access. And that obsessed with Dreams, but knowing that was something I could do spawned this whole thing of like, okay, I could make wind instruments with that. I could plug that into outputting sound instead of outputting lights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
snowballs can go.
Yeah.
Like, what else can I use controllers for?
Yeah, I think the way you're using these controllers is it's certainly not in ways that me or a lot of people would think of. The very first thing I saw you do that you posted to Twitter, it was you like tape the controller on the back of the monitor or put it on top of your monitor, and you just tilted it to make
Yeah.
spheres on screen to gravitate towards one side or the other. That's the first thing that I saw it, and when I saw it, I was like, okay, I see what he's doing. He's using the gyroscope on the controller. And then a couple or like a few posts later, you're like making a trumpet and you're making bagpipes, and I'm like, okay, hold on, this is black magic. Like, how the hell is this man achieving this kind of stuff? And I really like. Of course, you went over how to make your pool table on your YouTube channel, and just hearing you describe the logic is a lot of fun because it sounds like you have to kind of wrestle with Dreams or wrestle with the DualShock 4 controller a little bit to get what you want. And I guess what are trying to think how to phrase this. What are some difficulties that you've had with any projects? What's something you've had to wrestle with that was pretty memorable in your opinion?
Um, there have been a couple of things. Firstly, I have to give a huge shout out to my wife, who is very indulgent and will sometimes come home and the living room will be totally rearranged and furniture upside down and all that, and she's just like learned to accept that now, I suppose. So huge shout out to her. But anyway, some of the stuff that's has been like learning that certain features, even though some parts of Dreams you can partition to different controllers and different players, certain things output universally. And so, like for example, playing sound through the controller speakers. If I have a sound that's triggered by controller 3 and exclusively controller 3, because you can have up to 4 controllers connected, that sound, if I have it plugged out of the DualShock speaker, it doesn't play out of the speaker of DualShock 3. It plays through all of them universally, even though only controller 3 can trigger it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain things like that which are very nuanced that I've had to rethink how I'm doing the project.
But
It's been a lot of tricky wrestling with that.
yeah,
It's also been a lot of tricky wrestling with resetting some of these projects. Like I guess the snow one wasn't too bad, but there was a project where I'd have shredded paper that would be shaken off of this platform behind the TV, and that only triggered when the character was outside. So there are certain things where like I want to do this project, but like resetting it would either be a big hassle or it would just leave a mess. And that's kind of demotivating in a way, but I still try to come up with at least a small scale version of that. Like that snow project, I wanted to have like stuff hanging from the ceiling and it snowing around the couch, but like vacuuming that up afterwards would be a whole lot of trouble. So I have to like scale some things down.
yeah.
So part of it is getting a little too ambitious and needing to keep it reasonable.
Yeah, it's not like you have a warehouse that you can demolish on a regular basis. You have to keep your living room in somewhat of a livable state.
Yeah, it is in my living room, all this that's being done, and I've mentioned to my wife before that like I want to have an office someday. I don't have an office in the apartment that we're in now, but I've always wanted one anyway. But then also so that I can make a mess and not have to worry about it being in an acceptable state for people to come over.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. That's something that I had to keep in mind.
It is pretty funny seeing you start a video and your monitor's like turned upside down basically for this one demonstration. Because the monitor you play Dreams on, the big TV you have, it's not a easy thing to lug around. It looks like it's kind of a big project to move that thing around. Does your wife help you with that a lot?
On occasion, I can, like with the pool project. For example, I moved our dining room table, which isn't a large dining room table. It's, I don't know, maybe 3 feet wide, 3 feet squared, and then I moved that into the living room and then just grab the TV and tilt it onto the table. So that's a bit of hassle, but it's not too. There have been some projects where, right around the time that I did the TV tilting, actually, I did a couple of experiments with changing the angle of the camera in the scene, so that when I tilt the TV with the controller attached to it, the perspective in the game level would change as well. And so the idea being that you're like looking in a window, and let's say you had the monitor picked up in your hands, if you tilted the monitor around, it would be like I kind of like to think of it as like Monsters Inc., where you're just like looking to, well, wouldn't work exactly like that. But anyway, you get different perspectives based on what angle your monitor was at. And that, while technically worked, like with that one, for example, I'd actually need a TV to really show that off.
Mm-hmm.
So in quite the first world problem sort of way, my TV is too big for some of my ideas. But I think it's like 55 inches or something. But there are some things where it's like, the TV is too big or too much of a hassle to work with in order to demonstrate an idea that I have fully.
Mm-hmm. I did see on it was like a man turret project you did. You actually used a second screen app so that you could have a monitor on the little platform you were holding. I thought that was a pretty novel idea. Brings up like kind of asymmetric multiplayer vibes where one person's on the turret and maybe another person has to avoid the projectiles. Um, have you had ideas like that for like games, even if they're not really possible with Dreams, since we don't have anything like split screen or online multiplayer yet? Have you gotten some really good ideas that you think you'll carry further once we do get more options within Dreams?
Yeah, no, I've had some ideas for different games, not just tech demonstrations
Hmm.
that you're mentioning. Just a quick note: I actually wanted to use like a smaller monitor to demonstrate it more fully. Like if I plugged in an HDMI port to that small monitor, that would demonstrate the turret build a bit better. But I just had to borrow my wife's phone and do um, what was it? The
It,
PlayStation Remote app
yeah, it's like
where you can
the
stream.
second screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that I didn't have a monitor in between, but I wanted something like 23 to 30 inches or something that I could put on the chair for that one. Anyway, now I warned you about this rambling. I'm just rambling about that.
No, no,
Anyway, um,
it's honestly great to get that. That's kind of what these interviews are for. The last interview I did, it was a typed interview. I wasn't able to get it recorded, but it was for the big kaiju, the ruckus level.
oh
And
yeah,
that interview went great just because there were two creators. One of them, I believe, actually works at and the other is like a Japanese designer artist that created the kaiju itself. And the kind of the insider development information was kind of fascinating because, of course, Dreams is on PS4, so a lot of these developers have to maneuver around optimizing and making sure their games run at a smooth frame rate. Of course, your optimization is probably way different from any traditional optimization, but it's what everybody has to go through, and I think any sort of little tidbits about that are helpful for up and coming dreamers. Um,
Um,
but
one of the things that I've realized on with dreams specifically, is I wasn't concerned about optimization, at least not at first. Like my trumpet, for example, and probably like my rock paper scissors game as well. Like there's a ton of logic, and I had a grasp of like, I don't know, let's say a dozen of the logic tools, and like the different options within and sort of nuances of ways to use them. And I used that to get a result. And I used, maybe an excessive number of, uh, remote controller sensors and an excessive number of, calculators. But now having like gotten to the point where I am with Dreams, where I know how to use most of the logic tools, certainly more than I did at first. Well, not if, when. I should say when I go back and kind of push out those projects a little further, put in all the features that I want. The sort of the amount of logic that it takes, the amount of wires and ports and plugs, it's going to be far, far more efficient than it was when I first designed it. But I think done that so inefficiently, let's be honest, early on, mind trained to be like, okay, I want this result. I'm going to do what it takes to get that result. As sort of,
mm-hmm. kind of,
it's allowed me, I think, to see um, the logic tools in the ways that I've needed for my projects versus, seeing the signal manipulator as exclusively useful for this and this. Now I can look at it and see, okay, I can use it for this, but then also I can take this logic tool, use this setting, and achieve this very unconventional result.
mm-hmm.
So I think that in effect, time that I put in building those early projects actually is like put me in the right mindset to continue to do that, I think.
Yeah. Experience is like kind of it's a big hurdle for Dream specifically for a lot of new players because if you've never like experienced, if you don't come from an LVP background or like or even like if you've never played Minecraft before and you don't really have experience on like any game design, Dreams is a very ambitious thing to start learning to start off. Do you come from a LVP background, or do you, what kind of background do you come from?
I actually have never played Little Big Planet, and I'm ashamed to say that a little bit because I would have loved to, kind of looking back on it now, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Creation of consoles. My siblings and I, when I lived at home, we were more into Xbox 360 and the games that it had on there, and I did like, kind of fun stuff on there, like Just Cause 2, top 3 favorite games ever. I would like do zany stunts in that game and you know do things that probably weren't to be done,
Mm-hmm.
but like just have fun doing whatever. And so we didn't really have a PS3 until right around like a year before the PS4 came out, and that was more my brother's thing. I wasn't interested too much in stuff on there, so I kind of missed out on the PS3 generation of uh, creative games like that.
Yeah.
But then when Dreams came out, or I'm sorry, when Dreams was revealed back at the PlayStation 4 reveal event, um, the promise of that and what it can do like gripped me like nothing else ever has, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw myself really anticipating that, and sort of jumping in and original I thought I had. But anyway, and no, I don't really have actually a lot of experience with other creative games, as much as I would have liked to, and that I've missed out on.
Well,
Not too much.
I don't really see it as much as missing out because really, Dreams is basically a much more complex version of the LBP logic. Still use like node based stuff and things like that, but I've noticed Dreams is kind of bringing a lot of different like creative backgrounds into one platform. Um, like there's I think on either the last Dreambubble podcast or the one before, I was talking with two Project Spark creators, and I was just bouncing ideas back and forth from them. And it's really interesting hearing how they learned like programming, how they learned their own programming language and then kind of adapted it to Dreams. Because as much as LBP is similar to Dreams, there are a ton of differences, and there's like even for experienced creators in previous games like either Roblox, Project Spark, LBP, people universally have a tough time picking up Dreams for the first time. So it's just you gotta kind of force yourself to learn some of these tools.
Yeah, and I have thoughts on that a little bit, and this kind of goes with, well, I mean, life advice in general, I suppose. Not to sound too high and mighty about it, but um, I'd say definitely look at tutorials, see how to achieve certain effects. You know, there are great Dreams tutorials out there, and I've used a few myself. But like, look at tutorials and learn why the thing works. Not so much how to get the thing to work, but why it works as well. Because then you can use that in ways outside of what the tutorial effect has achieved. You know, if you're using the rotator and the play function to do a sculpt of a spiral or something,
Mm-hmm.
look at why that works and how else you can use it. So maybe like start off, looking up a tutorial for a specific logic tool, but definitely keep an open mind with how else you can use that, what else you can apply that to.
Yeah.
So it might continue to get started, but like, do what you need to get started, but definitely keep an open mind. I think that helps quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. I've definitely run into the issue where I've become too ambitious with my first few creations in either like Little Big Planet or Dreams, where you simply don't know enough yet. And a lot of the time, some of the creations that I've had the most fun creating or I've learned the most from were just me messing around with the tools that were given to me. Um, and my advice for anybody who does have ambitious ideas that they don't think they're ready to create yet, it's fine to keep them on the back burner. It's fine to like
Yeah.
hold off on those and then make something else, make something a little bit simpler, let that grow, and then when you're kind of feeling either uninspired or running out of ideas, you can return back to your big plan, your big brainchild.
Yeah, absolutely. I support that 100%. If you want to make a alien world exploration game, don't worry about, character animations at first. Start out modeling the vegetation, and maybe like then go on to other projects entirely and come back. Absolutely.
Mhm. I guess one question I've been wondering is, so you've made a lot of different things now when it comes to like the bagpipes we mentioned earlier to kind of amazingly a heart monitor using Dreams. What was the most difficult thing to make for you?
Hmm. Well, there's setups, and then there's difficult logic builds. Thing
I guess if you can think of one for each category, yeah.
the let's see the performance capture project is probably the most difficult to set up. Not so much that it's, you know, you have to rearrange the most furniture in your house or that sort of thing. Just the
Mhm.
sensitivity of it, because I need
Right.
to first have the controller secured on my head, at least to a reasonable level. Um, and then it's pulling on the thumbsticks that triggers, you know, the blinking eye or the open mouth, and that's by degrees. So if I open my mouth partially, it'll open the character's mouth partially. So keeping everything calibrated while I set up the whole thing is kind of tricky. And, you know, I have to take the string in such a way that like the string doesn't pull loose under the tape. Um, but enough tape that like it'll stay where it is on my skin, and you know, sort of the crinkles in my skin when I pull on that muscle won't totally dislodge that thing. I think in the video that I posted of my performance capture rig, I think it was my eyebrows or something came loose during filming, and I was just like, screw it, I'll go on.
Yeah.
Um, so the facial capture was certainly tricky to set up. Like if I had stronger tape, I suppose it would work a bit easier. But I didn't want to use too strong of tape, like on my eyelids, because then, you know, pulling it off would hurt and all that.
Yeah.
So like finding the balance of calibration in that was tricky. Um, did the experiment that I did where I like grabbed the ball on the screen with one hand and moved that ball and then let go and it stayed there.
Hmm.
Like the logic side of that in Dreams wasn't too bad, but in order to have that work properly, I had to move my arm along essentially just an even plane, just a flat plane. Otherwise, the calibration will be off. So performing that one was tricky, and it, you know, I had to edit that one down real bad because there's plenty of clips of me where I just like lost calibration because I moved my arm forward. So that one was tricky.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounds like a lot of this is just because, of course, you're trying to go for like a main, like you're trying to convey something, whether you're playing pool or you're doing like tracking motion or whatnot. But it seems like a lot, like a big portion of it is just the performance itself, just getting a great demonstration out of like this creation.
that is part of it. I have this joke with my wife that, you know, it works off camera just fine, and then as soon as I turn the camera on, it's like, well, now it's not calibrated, and you know, going
Mhm.
wrong here and there. And that does seem to happen where it's like, okay, this is working. You know, it'd be tricky to set up even before I start filming, but like, okay, I've got it working. It's working at least well enough to where I can demonstrate it. But then when I film it, I'll have to get a few minutes of footage and then choose the right 45-second segment or, you know, kind of pull clips together
Mhm.
to show it off because, you know, some of these aren't as 100% reliable the whole time. Um, like the heart monitor, for example, like I, you know, was lying down on the floor in front of my TV, and I had the dual shock on my neck. But because because I have it sense, if the controller vibrates at all or if it's nudged, that ticks up the counter of how many pulses were in that window that I gave it.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's walking, you know, 20 feet away from where I am, it's picking up their footsteps and adding to the counter. So there are certain things where it's like, all right, everyone in the apartment, just quiet down for a minute.
That's actually hilarious. You could double that creation as a like a presence sensor,
Yeah,
oh crap, someone's like opening the front door or
even
something
look
like
up on my front porch to see if someone's coming up or something. Yeah.
that. Wow, yeah.
Weird. And
The,
so much better off. They just had a few dual shocks.
yeah, just replace hospitals and like military equipment with DualShock 4 controller. That would great. I guess one big question I have for you, and like I mentioned before, of course, what you're doing is very similar to what Nintendo's doing with their Nintendo Labo, where they literally ship out boxes of cardboard, and you assemble like your own like a fishing rod peripheral or like a VR peripheral. Um, of course, you come from a Xbox background, so have you experimented much with like the Kinect or any other kind of niche input controller of any kind?
Not really, actually. I mentioned the Xbox 360, but I also have like a laptop I have now, I suppose, which at least back in the day kind of played the games I wanted to play well enough. And so it wasn't that I was, you know, an Xbox loyalist. Um, but then even when 4 came out, I didn't have the PlayStation camera and the Move controllers right away, nor the VR headset for when that first came out. In fact, I'm trying to remember what year it was. About a year and a half ago, I suppose. Right around the time that like the Dreams beta was announced, or the alpha, whichever it was.
Yeah.
But in December, there were a few weeks where creators could get in and get some access to it. And I knew like Dreams didn't have a release date, but I knew that like this program, Dreams, just appealed to me so much that I wanted to get whatever accessory was supported by it so that I could, play with Dreams fully. It's actually quite uncharacteristic of me because usually I wouldn't say cheap, but it's like, I don't need that, so I don't buy it, and I don't fancy things, so I'm not going to worry about getting it. But with Dreams, I actually saved up and like sold this PC that I built and sold a couple other things so that I could get an HDR TV and so I could get the PlayStation VR so that when those things are supported in Dreams, that I could just hit the ground running and like enjoy it to its fullest. And so like around Black Friday a year and a half ago, I started shopping around for all the accessories, and it was at that point that I got all that hardware, and really all at once. The TV we had before was, I think, like 37 inches or something. And one we have now is 55. I didn't have a VR, didn't have the PlayStation camera. I had a PS4 Slim before as well, but we traded that in to get the PS4 Pro so I could run Dreams just as well as it could go because I was just so obsessed with Dreams.
Yeah, part of me wanted to get a PS4 Pro for Dreams because, like you said, I started stock loading like Move controllers like right when information started coming out about Dreams, like 2 years before we were even able to access it. That's also the reason I got a PlayStation VR headset because, of course, we're still waiting for actual VR functionality for Dreams. But just stockpiling the equipment, it's kind of an understatement saying that Dreams is like not an investment for people, but hobbyists are hobbyists, and we're gonna get the best equipment for the job.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of I don't know how many, of course. I don't know the hard numbers, but I'm sure there are quite a few PSVR sales that happened because Dreams was, announced to eventually support VR.
Hmm. I know some of my friends have said that. Of course, a big part of Dreams and its development is Shuhei Yoshida, who's a big ambassador for PlayStation VR. And, during Dream's development, it's been recreated like two or three times from scratch, because, they just had to get the engine working. And I can't imagine the number of like troubleshooting issues they've had to do. But some of my friends have said a big reason why Dreams is still around today is because of the promise of VR support and how Dreams will be like the killing app for VR.
Yeah. I don't
And
think it's part of me wants to think that like it's not because of VR exclusively, the promise of VR that it's still around, as even as just like a sketchbook, like a storyboarding tool alone without VR, Dreams is quite special in that way. Um, but
mhm.
it just has such a wide array of things. It's great for sound design. I'm not a professional sound designer, so I don't know the actual
Yeah, the actual like workflow of that.
gamer, and you have like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I kind of got into this thing, into 3D modeling or into sound design or into animation. You don't have to go out and buy a PC that can run Unity. You don't have to go out and buy um, whatever piece of equipment to run that thing. If you have a PS4 and you're just like a standard gamer with a PS4 Slim and one DualShock, you can do so much and such a wide array of things. Um, I think as well that's one of the reasons why Dreams has kind of been hanging on this long. I'm glad they have because
Hmm.
there's and I suppose that's kind of my main mission with Dreams. I've done a few modeling projects and I have plans for some other projects that are traditional, if you will, but just and it is so much fun not only finding what it can do, but then also finding is on how to use it.
Hmm. Yeah. Seeing how flexible Dreams can really be, and trust me, you've definitely demonstrated that with handfuls of some of your projects. I guess while we're on the while we were covering the topic, are so since you've gotten PlayStation VR, have you looked into any VR experiences, and if so, have there been any that have stood out to you?
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out there. What was that?
Oh, sorry. Have you looked into any VR experiences through PlayStation, and if so, are there any you like?
Um, like, have I used the VR for? Have I gone out and purchased VR titles? You're saying?
Yeah, yeah, either purchase VR titles or I know there's a couple free ones you can get from PlayStation. I'm just wondering if you've seen any VR stuff outside of Dreams.
Yeah. No, there's some stuff out there that I've had a lot of fun with. VR is great. I'm not terribly competitive, but in Beat Saber, I have a brother who got PlayStation VR for Beat Saber. He also got a PlayStation 4 system a little while ago. Anyway, and then another brother of mine has a PC and got into VR stuff for a couple of reasons, but one of them was Beat Saber, and so we all like play Beat Saber together and kind of competitively between us. Um, oh man, now. Anyway, yeah, there's other stuff that I've used PlayStation VR for certainly. No Man's Sky in VR is amazing. Every sort of sci-fi dream I've had is kind of
Hmm.
kind of realized in that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've been super into VR for like since really Oculus came out with their first dev kit. My first headset was a Rift, and like because I do have a PC that can run that kind of stuff. But I think VR is great because people are still figuring it out. So when once VR functionality finally comes out with Dreams, I'm assuming hopefully shortly after release they'll have it integrated. I think last time Media Molecule talked about it was it was going to come in a future update after full release. But I think Dreams is going to be a great leader for some VR development because it's so easy and accessible to make things in Dreams, and I'm really excited for that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Just playing games, but like sculpting in VR is going to be amazing. I've tried a couple of different art programs and demoed, I should say, or like my brother who has VR. You know,
Hmm.
he has what is it? Not tilt brush. Anyway, he has this for VR, and is a very unique experience. You know,
Hmm. Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
just being able to like actually move your head around because it's the most natural way for us to navigate a 3D environment is to put our heads in there and let us move around. Um, so I know plenty of people who use PC sculpting softwares, um, to like sculpt masterpieces, and that's just their way. VR is their way of doing those kinds of things. Um,
I wasn't actually invested in VR. Like I didn't give it much attention even until no. Like, well, I mean, obsessed with dreams that like even though I wasn't invested in VR and I wasn't paying attention to it and emotionally um, invested in that way, um, like I thought, oh, that'd be neat to have in dreams. But it wasn't until I demoed or I tried VR, and I can't remember what I tried first. It was like Robo Recall or something
mm-hmm.
probably.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, no, this will be pretty cool. I've one of the games I've played before that I got pretty good at, and I enjoyed playing was Trials, both Evolution and Fusion, and Trials Rising.
Mm-hmm.
And those games are very, very much like you have to have. Well, I mean, you yourself have to perform reactions to how the bike rider is progressing through the level. But the controller has to have such a quick response from when you input that thing to when that thing happens, and just sort of the of doing something in VR, as refined as it is now. I thought like, okay, VR is neat, but it's not going to be anything I can play Trials in, for example. It's not going to have that responsiveness, and I feel like I would need that responsiveness, or at least so I thought. Um, but
Yeah.
where now like Beat Saber can be a thing, and people can play Beat Saber competitively. Um, but like I was kind of a skeptic early on,
Mm-hmm.
to be fair. A lot of
I
things where you don't need that responsiveness, and it's great for all sorts of things.
Yeah, I think everybody is just naturally a skeptic of VR until they try it, because I mean there are people who do try VR and either they suffer through too much motion sickness or whatnot to where they can't really get into it.
Mhm.
But VR is definitely like if anyone listening hasn't tried VR yet, I know there's a lot of different ways to try out VR without, going out and buying a headset. I know, I go to the University of Utah, and
Really?
yeah, and our library has VR stations with like Vive Pros, and you can literally just hook up your Steam, like log into your Steam account and start playing. Um, like I own my own headset, so I don't feel like getting like pink eye anytime soon from using a public headset. But VR is getting more
I think
accessible.
there's certain shops and malls I think as well that have like VR arcades.
Mhm. I actually, you mentioned it before. Beat Saber has its own arcade machine. Only I think it's mainly only available in like either Asia or in the EU. I'm not sure if there's any over in the States, but they're definitely out there.
Yeah,
So,
I remember when VR was first kind of getting getting attention. When Oculus was developing it early on. They kind of, at least to what I saw, they were sort of the initiators of this now VR trend. Um, but I had tried VR, at trade shows or when games started coming out and there were consumer level headsets being released. That like, yes, it's a big investment, but it's pretty neat. At least try to find someone who has VR and try it through them. And I think that's great. Like, yes, it's a bit of an investment, um, but I myself kind of dismissed it, at least to some degree. But when I tried it, I was like, okay, no, this does have a lot of promise, and
mhm.
try it at least at some point. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, has a lot of promise, just way too expensive right now. I think the best deal I can recommend for like if you want to get into VR but you don't want to 100% dedicate $1,000 PC for it, or you don't want to dedicate an entire console for it. Oculus has the Oculus Quest, which is all in one
Yeah,
headset, and I'd say that that's a good intro if you're interested in trying out VR, because it does have some of the best VR games like Beat Saber, and I know there's a bunch of other games being added to it in the coming months. But one feature I actually didn't realize it had. So if you buy the headset and you like it a lot and you want to try more games, you can actually now hook it up. You can plug it into a PC and just straight up play PC games with it. So if you start getting into it and you start enjoying it more to the point where yes, you're willing to blow $1,000 on it, then you have that option with the Oculus Quest. But that's the only headset I know of that you can really do that. Um, so one actually hold on. Okay, so one question I have for you, I'm kind of a big nerd when it comes to VR and tech and stuff like that, and one thing I'm starting to dabble with is 3D printing. So like I mentioned before, my university library also has 3D printers where we can pay like $6 to print something like some kind of 3D model. And I couldn't help but think while looking at your projects. Of course, you're making bows and arrows out of cardboard and stuff like that. Have you ever considered maybe 3D printing parts? And would you if you had access to 3D printers?
I absolutely would. I've been tempted so much to like 3D print like a gauntlet or something that just has a slot to put the DualShock in. Because like with the rock paper scissors game, for example, or other projects where I've put controllers in unconventional places, I'll do that with tape, and I'll in 9 out of 10 cases I need the controller to be like really secure with where it is.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be able to have like a slot that has like this will hold the controller securely, and you can put your hand in here and then use it in this way, and you don't have to worry about like recalibrating the tape every time. That would be so nice. As well as just like printing figurines, to decorate your house with, and printing pieces to games like your like custom chess pieces or role playing stuff, D&D. Like that alone would be so cool. But me specifically, I'd want something where I can like have the controller, like have the string attached to where my fingers go, so I don't have to like tape up my fingers and keep it calibrated every time, and just make it so nice to like reset between tests and projects and not have to worry about calibration. It'd be so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the one project. I think this was one of the first projects I did with 3D printing just at my university. As soon as I graduate, I won't have access to these printers, so I'm kind of trying to get as much out of them as I can before I graduate in a year. But the first project I did was to make a VR gun stock for two Oculus controllers. And it's exactly like you say. It's basically the only things I needed to 3D print were the actual cups that hold the controllers, so that, like you said, I don't have to deal with any tape or having to just buy rolls and rolls of Scotch tape just to play a VR game the way I want to. And the one website, really the hardest part about it is finding access to like 3D printers. Because of course you can just look online and see a billion companies sell 3D print stuff for you, but oftentimes if you do enough research, you might be lucky and find like a library or find like some kind of tech lab that has a printer for you. But like for me, I'd say as soon as I graduate, and if I want to still experiment with 3D printing. Now you can actually grab a decent 3D printer for like $200. So I might have to splurge on myself personally and snag one of those after I graduate.
Yeah, I might get pretty tempted. I'm already tempted, but I might get even more tempted myself here pretty soon. I think like prototypes, proof of concept. But if you're wanting to do something consistently, like my bow and arrow game, for example, like that the build that I used in order to keep everything secure, I used a lot of tape, and that was great to make sure it worked before I went out and 3D printed something. Dang, I forgot what I was saying. But anyway, being able to, that'd be so nice. That'd be so nice.
Yeah.
I got so excited.
Oh no, don't worry about it. It's like the 3D printing. It's one of those things where it's like like as soon as you find out about it, you're like, oh well, I'm just gonna 3D print like every appliance in my house. So like it does have a lot of stuff to apply to. It's just a really big learning curve and a lot of experimentation to get it working. But it's at least great that they're becoming cheaper, and that's something I'm definitely gonna get into.
Yeah.
So one of the last things I do want to cover is so of course all the stuff you've been doing with your Dreams creations and using the DualShock 4 and Move controllers, you're getting a lot of attention. Lucky you, whether you want it or not. But a lot of people are looking up to you, and they're honestly getting inspired. I've seen a couple creations that follow in the same vein as yours, whether it's like a sword fighting game or whatnot. But you mentioned on Twitter how doing this little hobby might actually come out, or might actually result in you going into a career for it. Do you have any ideas about that, or do you have any like plans for the future based on what you've been doing in dreams?
Um, well, first, I just want to say I'm flattered like, that I never expected this amount of attention. Never expected to do most of these projects. Really, the whole point of the Twitter account was just the reason I made it in the first place was to have like a place online that I could access easily. And if family came into town to visit, or I just wanted to like link them to something and to show them this fun little thing that I did, I could just link them to that
Mm-hmm.
and show this to people I knew in person really easily. But like I never expected to be like followed by Media Molecule, and like the day that happened, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, look at this, look at this. It's pretty wild. But I've always thought of myself as having kind of a knack for logic and reasoning and thinking up unusual uses for things. I mentioned like Just Cause 2, but like I do stunts and silly things that were probably never expected to be done, or not that I did like amazing things, but I'd take a limousine and hang it from an elevator and just watch the elevator like compact the car. And it's like, hey, a car compactor out of an elevator,
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's kind of done this sort of thing where I'll play it traditionally and then go through again and just sort of have fun and go a bit crazy. And like in schooling and such, I've done pretty well in logic courses and like philosophy as well, where you just have to think of something in a unique way. Like how I compared to others who would be trying to do this professionally. Like even though I enjoy doing this sort of thing professionally, I realize I've known that for years and years. I just didn't know if I was unique enough, or if like I had unique ideas enough to do this to where someone would pay me to a point where I could sustain a family, sustain a lifestyle doing this. But sort of what's come out of my experience with dreams has sort of pushed that from like, oh, that'd be fun, but that's maybe not practical for me, into it's pushed that into, oh shoot, people do like my ideas, and I do kind of have crazy things that I want to be able to do. So maybe I can make an impact. Maybe I can find a way to do what I love, do this sort of thing, even though it's been a hobby, turn that into a professional career. And that's one of the things that Dreams has really kind of facilitated and catalyst for me, is turning this like, oh, that would be fun, but I don't know how good I am, into, oh, maybe I should. And I don't have solid plans. I'm not talking with any companies specifically, at the moment. I'm definitely open to doing this professionally, learning what tools I need to. I was talking with my wife today, just in fact, actually, about like going into, or taking some courses on programming and sort of seeing what I could do with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no solid plan to do this professionally, but now that it's not just like, oh, I don't know how good I would be, so I'm not going to bother putting in the effort to learn all this. I don't mean I'm not going to bother, but
Mm-hmm.
um,
You
it's
you have a new sense of
how.
confidence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the attention I've gotten, has been like, I didn't even know if I'd ever get above 10 followers on Twitter. I I didn't even know how Twitter worked, and things out about Twitter now. Like I'm not big into social media and such, so it's I'm pretty introverted generally. Really has instilled sort of an indulgent curiosity, if nothing else, into this potential career path. And so I'm starting to pursue, learning, taking courses to learn coding to see what I can do on that side. While still working, a quote unquote regular job, even though it's independent. Anyway, Dreams has kind of changed my life, and I mean that in a very literal sense.
Yeah, and it's really great that Dreams is helping people, find out who they are and what their talents are. Of course, like for me, the LBP games were the ones that kind of woke me up and helped me develop into hobbies that I do now. And I'm kind of in the same boat as you are, where I don't know what I'm going to be doing in a year from now when I graduate, but man, I'm just going to try to apply for stuff I love, apply for what I want to do, and just kind of hope for the best. Because that's all you can really do with these towering corporations looking down on their employees. But it's a process.
Dreams is absolutely amazing. One of the things that kind of bugged me. Like, I wasn't actually annoyed by this, but a lot of the news postings, like if you go to different gaming news sites, there would be, I don't know, probably about a year ago, as soon as like the PT hallway or the Rogue Squadron demo where they're flying around the Star Destroyer, like, don't get me wrong, those are absolutely great projects and they show capabilities of Dreams. Someone made Final Fantasy VII remake, or it made like a remake of Final Fantasy VII, and someone did like Metal Gear Solid. Those projects are great and a lot of fun, but a lot of the attention that I had seen posted by people who weren't Media Molecule was like, oh, look at this remake of this other game that someone's done, and that seemed to be the only thing outside of the community that was already there for Dreams. It seemed to be all that I was seeing. And it kind of hurt. Again, I hesitate to use the word like it bugged me or irritated me, because it didn't really, but it seemed to me like the public perception of Dreams was becoming, oh, Dreams is a game making tool, and it is, but this is where, this is what Dreams is being built for. And again, like, you can do that, yes, and it's great for that, but it is so much more. Like it can do whatever you put your mind to, really.
Yeah, it definitely did whatever, like all your projects. Like a heart rate monitor, never thought that would be possible.
Yeah, but so like part of me wants to shout out the fact that, like, if you're a game maker and you want to make games, either like little hobby games or party games, or if you want to do something larger scale, yes, Dreams is great for that, but I don't think it's meant like public perception that's kind of targeting that audience. I think sculptors and music makers and people who aren't interested in making games but want to do like silly animations for their kids. Someone did like a puppet show using Dreams, and like it is such a wider audience than I think a lot of the attention it's been getting. Yeah, I really want to push that point that, like, it's more than just a game making tool, and everyone should get into it.
Yeah. For marketing purposes, it's easy for Sony to label Dreams as a game making tool, but like you said, it seriously is a tool just for artists and designers. It's just an
Yeah.
easy, accessible tool where, hey, are you having trouble 3D modeling things in Maya? Try Dreams. It's a lot easier. That sort
Yeah,
of
there are
thing.
tools in there that are unique that no one else is doing, you know.
Hmm.
And I do get that, like, you know, it's, you know, the only limit of this thing are your imagination. Like that's a marketing line that's been used in countless other things, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and so you kind of might, you know, tick Dreams into that box of like, oh, I've heard that before, and that game didn't really pan out the way I expected it to, so I'm not going to give it attention. You know, I it it deserves more attention than even how it's marketed uh, by some other people. I'm not listing specific people, and you know,
Hmm.
anyway, here I am rambling again. But yeah, it deserves more taglines than just a game making tool for sure.
Yeah.
Although that it's great for that. Don't get me wrong.
No, I definitely agree with you. Um, so I think I went through all of my questions. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything you want to tell the Dreams community? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, just a couple little things like, you know, I feel like I get starstruck thinking about like how much attention I'm getting, which I don't know how that makes me sound truly, but like when I think, oh, that's cool, someone did that, and like, oh wait, right, that was me, that's weird. Um, like it's so bizarre to me, like how much attention I'm getting, because I've spent my life up until this point, you know, kind of being more of a quiet kid, you know,
Hmm.
um, not really demanding attention or doing performances with various things, you know. So thank you, first of all, to everyone who's sort of been interested in my work. Um, very, very surreal for me. Um, so such a wild idea that like, oh my gosh, there are people in other countries who are like, next. That is so bizarre. So I want to say thank you. Like this is so, you know, and if this stays a hobby, you know, if Dreams stays a hobby, that's one of the reasons I like invested in Dreams before I knew that like I'd be getting this attention. Um, is just like this will be such a fun hobby for me. Like if it stays at that, I will be happy. You know, this is now turning into professional aspirations, and hopefully something comes from this. But if it stays where it is, like I'll be happy. I'm going to keep doing this, you know, for as long as I reasonably can. Um, it's just so much fun to like mess around in Dreams and not just like find unconventional uses for controllers, but the modeling tools are so much fun to use. And I say this like a blanket statement, you know, that everyone should get into this, but you know, there's probably something for everyone in this. And kind of like VR, like even if you don't have a PlayStation yourself, you know, see if someone near you has Dreams and try it out, because odds are someone's either remade your favorite thing and that will be cool, or you know, they've genre of game that might interest you in other games. Like say there's a difficult game that someone made in Dreams and that gets you in Dark Souls, and that opens up a whole world of like Bloodborne and Sekiro and you know the Surge and other games like that. You know,
Hmm.
like Dreams, try it out because you might find something, you might learn something catalyst by that you're interested in, and it it has so much promise, and you can do it. It's worth at least your attention, I think.
Hmm.
And if you're
Definitely.
already interested in doing, great. but there's so much even yet to be discovered, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, Dreams is definitely like worth looking into, at very least looking into, because Dreams does promise a lot, and on the surface it looks like, oh, I've seen this before with many other games, like, oh,
Yeah.
like a game engine that you can tamper with inside of a console that's been tried before and it hasn't been like majorly successful, but like if you ask anyone who's currently playing Dreams, anyone who's currently making stuff within Dreams, if Dreams is worth it and if Dreams is keeping its promises, it definitely is, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So definitely look into it. It might just be exactly what you're looking for, in a very cheesy way.
We weren't looking for it. Yeah, so good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, TannicAlloy, for hopping on this call and
Yeah.
a short interview with me. I've been blown away by your stuff, and I'm so glad I got to talk to you. In case anybody's wondering, if you want to follow TannicAlloy, all he posts all of his creations to his Twitter. That's at TannicAlloy. And he also has a YouTube channel that he occasionally posts behind the scenes on how he creates things like his pool table and rock, paper, scissors. So if you're interested in more of TannicAlloy, go ahead and check him out. He's 100% worth it, and he blows my mind on a regular basis. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. This has been an interview with TannicAlloy. And have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.